Hello and welcome to DSSITV. Today I'm joined with Jim Waring, the Vice President of Business Development at Crestwood Technology Group, more commonly known as CTG, whose specialities lie in supplying militaries and defense agencies around the world with critical parts to help militaries maintain mission readiness for countries maintaining legacy systems beyond their expected life cycle. So Jim, can you outline the challenges militaries are currently facing keeping equipment mission ready since many countries maintain legacy systems well beyond their expected life cycles?
Yeah, thank you. So as you might guess, there are numerous challenges associated with legacy systems that outlive their life cycle. A lot of these systems have been put through a lot of extensive use and gone well beyond the expectancy before they were going to be replaced. CTG focuses on one of the largest contributing factors that we see in both the United States Department of Defense, but also with our defense, our international defense customers. And that's the challenges associated with locating, sourcing, finding hard to find, long lead time, and obsolete parts, spares, components, and material. These type of parts are hard to come by in many cases, and it's not limited to aircraft. We find this with aircraft, both fixed wing and rotary wing, as well as ground vehicles, naval vessels, and the associated supporting equipment that goes with that. The inability to find these parts and source these parts through existing supply chains is an impact on readiness and availability of these systems for many defense customers. So what we see in many cases when the system has outlived its life cycle is that the OEM or the prime no longer is interested, or it's not cost effective to source repair parts. It's more effective in many cases for them to go with a system upgrade, a change proposal, or something, a newer version to support the aircraft. What CTG focuses on, and where we come into play, is we have the capability through a number of contemporary systems to reach out and locate these hard to find, long lead time repair parts, spares, and material. So when our customer reaches out to us, that's what we do. We look for that, and we're able to provide those parts in many cases and increase the readiness of these legacy systems.
So Jim, when it comes to military repair parts and components and spares, how broad is CTG's inventory?
So there's really two parts to answer this question. The short answer is we have a vast inventory of parts, spares, material, and it really is sourced through two means. One is CTG. We have our own organic internal inventory, which is maintained in a number of warehouses. We have two large warehouses in our headquarters facility in Yonkers, New York. We have another facility upstate New York and a number of smaller facilities in the United States. What we do in those facilities is we primarily maintain inventory based on the demand signal or the recurring requirement and historical data from our customers. So those are usually the parts and components and material that we know and we anticipate them asking for, in many cases on short notice. The second part of the answer, and the more significant part, is we have a vast supply chain of approved vendors, trusted approved vendors, all of whom have been very closely vetted, and they are monitored and routinely inspected. We've developed relationships over the last 19, 20 years with over 2,500 plus or minus of these approved vendors who are able to source these parts. Again, as I mentioned previously, through a number of contemporary systems that we use to reach out on the supply chain across the globe to locate hard to find parts. So regardless, whatever the sources of our parts, whether it's one of these approved vendors or it's from our internal sources, all of our parts, components, and material are tested, certified in our state-of-the-art laboratory, inspected, and proven authentic to make sure our customer gets exactly what they're asking for.
Okay, great. And one of the common challenges faced by militaries is what are the supply chain options when confronted with hard to find or obsolete parts? Is it additive manufacturing? Is it a reverse engineering, or is a last resort sort of engineering change proposal? They pose their own risks and challenges, and how can you help with this?
So, Andrew, this is a very common question we get from our customers. And what we like to say is the U.S. Department of Defense has a publication called SD22. That is the Diminishing Manufacturing Sources and Material Shortages, or DMSMS guidebook, published and most recently updated in 2016. And what the publication does is it includes best practices and describes how to implement an effective DMSMS or obsolete parts program aligned with systems. Within this publication is an interesting study that was done by the Department of Commerce in 2015 that basically says it is much more cost effective and timely to look for parts than it is to go to additive manufacturing or alternative sources that you've described, such as 3D printing or reverse engineering, or something along those lines. So we ascribe to that. CTG believes that if you come to us and you let us look for that part before you go to something different, it's more cost effective and timely, and we can help you with your readiness challenges in that regard. So we're frequently asked, well, what kind of luck do you have, or what kind of success do you have finding these hard to find parts? We routinely find parts at about a 53 to 73% find rate on the first pass through our system. And if we get additional data, we frequently, such as an upgraded version or a drawing or something of that nature, we can usually increase our ability to find those hard to find parts. So the takeaway would be, look before you go to an alternative means, because you can get the part faster and it'll be much more cost effective exponentially. Now, that being said, we don't always find the part. CTGs can't always find the part. So we have a number of partners that we work with very closely, who have also been closely vetted, that do provide us additive manufacturing capabilities, such as 3D printing and reverse engineering. And sometimes that is the case. So that's basically our view on how to best source parts and address the DMSMS and obsolete parts challenge.
And since the time of the day, has the COVID-19 outbreak affected your supply chain in terms of delivering spare parts quickly to the end user, or where it's needed the most?
Well, yeah, that's a great question too, based on the times. I would tell you that no, not at all. Actually, on the contrary, our business has actually maintained steady state for a number of reasons. First off, CTG was identified by the U.S. Department of Defense as an essential business in the memorandum that was published by the Undersecretary of Defense back in early March. That tied directly to the defense industry base. So at the federal and national level, CTG was recognized as an essential defense business, which meant we could maintain continuity and we could continue our supply chain business. Secondly, on the more local level, with our headquarters being located in Yonkers, New York, CTG was also recognized by the state of New York as an essential business that allowed us to maintain business, whereas other businesses were required to shut down or scale back. Our CTG leadership team, the executive team, took some really aggressive and proactive steps very early on in February, early March, with the onset of the COVID-19 here in the United States specifically, to make sure that we were protecting our CTG workforce, but also our customers to a certain extent, while simultaneously we were maintaining continuity for the supply chain and support to our customers. And this really paid off, this proactive, measured approach. Additionally, we took on new business that emerged and broadened our support, primarily providing PPE, protective personal equipment, in the way of masks, gloves, hand sanitizer and such, that we hadn't previously done much business with. And we did that in support of both U.S. Customers, but also on the international level. So we have weathered the storm, and we're continuing to do business. I wouldn't say as usual. We've taken these steps, and we continue to implement these steps based on the level of the COVID threat here in the U.S. and with our customers.
Glad to hear it. And having served nearly 3 decades of service in the US Army, with your experience, how does CTG integrate or work with existing government supply chain procedures to increase military readiness and fleet availability?
Right. So having served 28 plus years as a U.S. Army officer, active duty, and a field artilleryman, I do have a very solid understanding of the Army and the defense supply chain, as well as the Defense Logistics Agency supply chain, and to a certain extent, our international defense customer supply chains, having served a number of tours overseas and working closely with our international partners and allies. The supply chain system's a good system in the U.S., the services, and with the DLA. And it works very well most of the time. So we recognize that. Having been a field artillery battalion commander with 18 Paladin howitzers, I faced the challenges of finding hard to find repair parts and working the Army supply chain system. So I know where those challenges lie. And there are cases, especially when it comes to some of our older platforms, where parts cannot be located, or if they can, there's an extensive lead time, sometimes in excess of a year, to locate and source those parts. And that directly affects readiness or availability of systems. And we recognize this. We hear this routinely from our U.S. defense customers as well as our international defense customers. And when it comes specifically to what we call pacing items, things such as a Paladin howitzer or a UH-60 helicopter, or on the Air Force side, a MICAP mission capability scenario where you can't get an aircraft off the ground because you have that one part that just cannot be sourced and located through the existing supply chain system with your respective service, and the Defense Logistics Agency. That's where CTG fills the void. That's where we like to say we augment, we don't undermine, we augment the existing supply chain systems that are in place. Now, we've had this discussion at many levels, many times, recently with the Commanding General of the Defense Logistics Agency, 3-star, who was concerned that CTG might be trying to undermine the supply chain system, and we made it very clear that's not the case. Our BD team, business development team at CTG, we're all retired military or law enforcement. We all understand how supply chain works, and we would never make an attempt to undermine the supply chain. We would merely augment it. So I would tell you what my boss likes to say is that CTG often provides that best last good option when the part can't otherwise be procured. So that's basically how we integrate. We augment, we don't undermine.
Okay, and in terms, Jim, of counterfeit avoidance and sort of quality assurance, they're very critical when sourcing hard to find and obsolete military parts and spares. What steps has CTG taken to overcome these hurdles?
So this one is a really good question for CTG, and it's probably the easiest question to answer. I would tell you this is what sets CTG apart from our competition. CTG has a industry-leading and cutting-edge counterfeit avoidance program, and this came as a direct result of our CTG leadership recognizing very, very early on the proliferation of counterfeit parts, components, and material into the supply chain, the U.S. supply chain. I would say as early as 2004, 2005, our leadership made a conscious decision to implement a cutting-edge quality control, quality assurance, and counterfeit avoidance program, even taking to the level where we had, they built state-of-the-art laboratory on site in our headquarters in Yonkers, New York, where we conduct testing, quality control, and all of our certifications and qualifications. We have a list of certifications that both support our U.S. and international customers that certify and qualify us to conduct this type testing. So the bottom line is that we're able to proactively identify counterfeit parts. We are part of the GUIDEP and ERAI program, which has us reporting violators that are sourcing counterfeit parts. But this is the bread and butter of what CTG does. And that is important because we want to make sure that every part, component, material that we provide our customer has been tested, is authentic, has the appropriate certifications, and is validated. We can't afford to make one mistake when it comes to counterfeit avoidance and sourcing a counterfeit part. So we make sure we are in full compliance. And this is one of our biggest value propositions is our counterfeit avoidance program, which again, we believe is industry leading.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. Well, there you have it. If you're looking to prolong legacy systems and their operations or maintain operational capabilities, please get on touch in the link below and see how sort of CTG can help. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.